While Marth might be the most recognizable character from the Fire Emblem series, Anna is, to my mind, the closest thing we have to a series mascot, appearing in all but 2 of the games. Sometimes she's an NPC shopkeeper, sometimes she manages the menus, and sometimes she's even a playable character. So today I want to take a closer look at the history of Anna, mostly just because I think she's neat. But also my patrons think she's neat because they are the ones who voted on the topic of this video. Obligatory Patreon plug, if you're interested in voting in future polls, there is a link below. It really helps the channel out, you get democracy plus early videos, and I'll read your name in the end credits. But with that out of the way, let's look at the red-headed gal herself. In the first Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, which I will henceforth be referring to as Fire Emblem 1, Anna exists on the save menu at the end of every chapter, asking if you want to continue or quit. She is also present in the game's various secret shops, selling high-level goodies, including stat boosters. And because of how busted Fire Emblem 1's economy is, I would argue that these are the strongest secret shops in the game. Sure, you can't get boots like you can in FE6, but you can afford to cap basically every unit in your army once you access those secret shops. But to me, the funniest thing about Anna in Fire Emblem 1 is despite her existence being mostly subjugated to menus, she has more lines of dialogue than about 80% of the cast. Because in addition to being a shopkeeper and save point girl, she also exists within the world of Arcanea. And if in Chapter 11 you visit the house that she resides in, she will talk about how Jake is her sweetheart and give you a hint regarding his recruitment. It's not much, but when you consider how many of the units in your army are simply using the same face and lack any and all personality, you could make the argument that Anna has a bigger story involvement than the likes of Dolph, McAllen, Board, Cord, etc. Interestingly, Fire Emblem 1 has been remade twice, and Anna's appearance in the marketplace has been changed each time. In Fire Emblem 3 Book 1, the chapter still exists, but Jake is no longer a recruitable unit, and as a result, the house that Anna is in no longer has Anna in it as well, instead just a generic villager giving a generic piece of advice. However, in Fire Emblem 11, Jake returns and is buffed to all get-up, but in order to recruit him, you now actually have to visit the house that Anna was in. Where previously she just hinted that Sita needed to talk to Jake, now you actually have to have someone talk to Anna before Sita can talk to Jake. Which honestly makes sense, because in the recruitment conversation, Sita says like, hey, wouldn't Anna be disappointed in you for fighting for the enemy? And it doesn't make sense that she would have that information if somebody hadn't talked to Anna in the first place. It is also worth noting that in both of these remakes, Anna's role as the secret shop merchant and the save screen merchant has not been altered, although the stocks of her secret shops have been slightly changed. Regardless, Anna wasn't in Gaiden or its remake Shadows of Valentia because she doesn't like bad video games, so the next thing we'll be talking about is Fire Emblem 3 Mystery of the Emblem, Book 2. In Fire Emblem 3, Anna retains the main role that she had in Fire Emblem 1, that being the Maiden of the Menu. She asks if you want to save at the end of every chapter. Hey, Editing Danny here, that's incorrect. No, she does not ask if you want to save at the end of every chapter. All that Anna does in the menus is she asks if you want to reset when you game over. She also runs the secret shops, which is pretty neat, but she does not show up in any other part of the menu except for game overs. I was confusing FE1 Anna, because FE1 Anna does that, but FE3 Anna does not. That was my bad. However, unlike the first Arcanea game, she never actually appears in the world. Well, at least until the remake, Fire Emblem 12 New Mystery of the Emblem, because this remake makes Jake playable again, which he was not in the original FE3. Jake is actually recruited in the desert, and he mentions that he's looking for Anna, which is a hint to the fact that not only is there a secret shop on the map, but it is 2 tiles to the right of Jake's starting position. Unfortunately, there's no special dialogue if you visit with Jake, which to me says that Anna cares more about making sales than she does about making smooches. Girl needs to get her priorities straight is all I'm saying. The secret shops once again have some limited stock items, but this time they're not limited to stat boosters, and include things like unique weapons and master seals. In fact, the first secret shop in the game just has a single master seal for sale, which is kind of funny in my opinion. It is a powerful pickup though. There are quite a few units that benefit from early promotion. Fire Emblem 4's overhauled inventory system removed the need for on-map shops, including secret shops. However, Anna still makes an appearance in the title. One of the services offered in castle towns is the storage system. This allows units to store items that they don't want in their inventory anymore. Similar to the convoy of previous games, but unlike previous games, there is not one individual convoy. Instead, each unit has their own convoy. As a result of this, I find that in most playthroughs, you don't really interact with the storage system. Most units do not need more items than they can hold in their inventory. Sometimes it can be a useful part of money management. For example, if you want to sell an expensive ring, but you're near the gold cap, you can purchase something, but if your inventory is full, you can shove an item into storage before purchasing. That way you actually have room to buy a new item. But for the most part, I find that this is the least used tab that I have in the home castle, which on reflection does kind of make sense. Anna is supposed to be the head of the secret shop, so it makes sense that the service she offers in your home base is the one that you would go to the least. You're overlooking it in the same way that you would overlook secret shops. That's not to say that Anna isn't involved in any secret events. In Generation 2, all of these substitute characters have a secret event tied to them, and Anna is present in Layla's secret event. Layla is the replacement character for Lean if Sylvia died or wasn't married. If Layla visits a specific village in Chapter 7, then Anna will give her the Barrier Sword, which gives +5 resistance when equipped. Anna's role in this game is pretty minor, but her inclusion does have significant implications. Firstly, Judd Girl is a different setting than Arcanea. While it's definitely possible that it is simply a different continent on the same world, much like Valentia, there's no evidence that directly points to this. And personally, I think different Fire Emblem settings all exist in their own worlds and/or realities, similar to the Final Fantasy series. This is partially because, for the most part, the games and settings don't reference each other, and partially because many of the games have different canonical mythologies and religions that are confirmed to be real within the course of the game. Like, the Demon King is a real part of Magvel, but the god Loptus is a real part of Judgrel, and the Earth Dragons are a real part of Arcanea. I personally find it unlikely for the various different pantheons of gods to all exist on the same plane of existence. So if this is a Final Fantasy-esque situation, then Anna is sort of squarely in the place of Cid, the reoccurring character from that series. Sort of a running joke mascot character that the developers keep putting in so fans of the series recognize them, point and go, oh, it's Anna, it's Anna, it's Anna. And at this point in the series, it seemed that they were trying to do the same thing for her boyfriend Jake, because he is also present in Genealogy. He appears in both Arthur and Linda's secret events, and he's wandering through the mountains looking for Anna. This kind of establishes them as a dimension-hopping couple, with Anna as the elusive, secretive trickster and Jake as the empty-headed but good-natured boyfriend. This also shows that Anna is supposed to be the same Anna that we met in the Arcanea games. Even though she's fulfilling a different role in the gameplay, the fact that she is still Jake's red-headed girlfriend, to me confirms that she is meant to be the same person. Anna is in Fire Emblem 5, although I suspect that most players have not seen her. She is once again running the secret shop, but this might just be her most secretive location of all time. It's on Chapter 24, which is either the second or third to last chapter in the game, depending on whether or not you go to 24X, the worst chapter in existence. Not only that, but in order to reach the Taya where the secret shop is, you need to either use the warp staff or exploit an incredibly obscure glitch. But even if you were to look up the location of the secret shop online, you would still need to get the member card, which is its own ordeal. In most other Fire Emblem games, the member card is either dropped by an enemy, stolen from an enemy, or in one of your unit's starting inventories. But here, you need to complete a side objective in Chapter 18, leaving all of the Leonster soldiers alive. If you do this, they will give you the member card. On its own, this is already pretty obnoxious. I think keeping red units alive is the most annoying side objective Fire Emblem has, because sometimes the little weaklings can just suicide into your units, and unless you disarm everyone in your army, you don't really have any way around that. But this is obnoxious even by keeping red units alive standards, because Chapter 18 is also home to a much more significant side objective, that being the Xavier recruitment, which is a very complicated process involving getting a series of green civilians to talk to specific red armaments. Because many players choose to go for full recruitment in all of their playthroughs, I think most people prioritize the Xavier recruitment over the member card side objective. While it is true that you could attempt both, I think that stretches the difficulty of each of them even further, and these are already pretty frustrating side objectives to go for. But even if you, like me, do not always go for full recruitment, there is still the matter of weighing which one yields you a better reward. Xavier is a pretty decent unit. He's a pre-promoted general with good bases and, aside from lances, good weapon ranks. The member card will not give you any immediate use, and once you get to Chapter 24, you could buy stat boosters for the last 2 maps of the game, but you also get a bunch of very strong units in late game Thracia, and if you've been at all efficient about using scrolls to train up your training projects, you probably don't need to purchase a bunch of stat boosters. The only use case I could see for purchasable stat boosters at this stage in the game is to meet some magic benchmarks so you don't get statused by some of the deadlords in the final chapter. But this secret shop does not sell any magic boosting items. This is so stupid. What is the point of this secret shop? Oh yes, I'm gonna get life ring, power ring, skill ring, speed ring, shield ring in fucking Chapter 24. Anna, you are a scam artist. I mean, I guess I respect the grind set, but like, holy shit, sell me a magic ring, make it worth my while. Ugh. Yeah, Thracia's secret shop is awful. Before we move into the Game Boy Advanced era, I do want to take a slight delay to Tearring Saga. Regular viewers will know this is the game that Kaga made after he and Intelligent Systems parted ways, and it is, for all intents and purposes, a Fire Emblem clone. In fact, prior to a lawsuit between Kaga and Nintendo, the game was called Emblem Saga. As a result of this lawsuit, Kaga was forced to change many things about this game so that they were not straight ripped from Fire Emblem. This is why some skill names, weapon names, and class names are different than we might be used to. But one detail that, for whatever reason, Kaga was not forced to change is that Anna is also present in Tearring Saga. I mean, she's not referred to as Anna, but she's the redhead who runs secret shops. That is pretty clearly Anna. However, secret shops in Tearring Saga work differently than you might be used to. In the Fire Emblem series, you simply need to hold the member card and go to a specific space on the map where the secret command will come up. But in Tearring Saga, you need to use the member key, which is a 5 durability item, and visit a specific house. If you visit the house without the key, you'll be told just some generic line of dialogue. But if you have the key, they will recognize you, you'll lose 1 durability on the member key, and you'll be able to access the secret shop. One thing that is potentially worth noting is that non-Lord characters cannot send items from the shop to the convoy. Therefore, it is always ideal to send your Lord to the shop, because they can purchase things in a single trip exceeding their inventory limit. Otherwise, you would only be able to buy 5 items in exchange for 1 durability on the key. And these secret shops do have some pretty centralizing items, like Levin swords and physics stabs that you can't really get in many other locations. Thank you for humoring my Kaga Saga section. To my knowledge, Anna does not appear in any of his later games, although I'm only halfway through Berwick and I haven't really played much of Vestaria, so if I'm wrong about this, feel free to correct me in the comments section. Moving on to the GBA era, and here, once again, Anna mostly exists to facilitate secret shops. However, there are some interesting aspects to the way that secret shops work in all 3 Game Boy Advance games. I mean, their overall function is still the same. You have the member card, you go to a secret place, and you hit the secret command in order to enter the shop. But the items sold in the shop are kind of interesting to me. The first secret shop in the Binding Blade is in Chapter 16, which is also the map where you get access to the member card. The only items sold are angelic robes and promotion items. However, considering just how unbalanced promotion items are in the Binding Blade, your team might need to buy some of those promotion items. If your team composition has more than 2 Knight's Crest users, you probably want to buy a 3rd Knight's Crest. The same goes for Hero Crests and, most crucially, Guiding Rings, because you only get 2 Guiding Rings outside of this secret shop. And there are a lot of Guiding Ring users in the Binding Blade, and the majority of them have some argument for being on a player's long-term team. Saul is typically going to have your highest staff rank, and giving him a Guiding Ring gives him a whole 50 more staff experience, letting him reach warp even faster. On the flip side, Clarine combines staff utility with horse utility, and while you could settle for Cecilia's C-rank stabs, you don't have to if you're willing to feed Clarine a Guiding Ring. But it's not just your staffers that are hungry for this promotion item. Lou is a very useful 1-2 range anima mage in the early game, and while I'm not high on his long-term prospects, I don't think it's unreasonable to train him up and decide to promote him as your resident mage. But if you're not a fan of him, Lilina has a big magic growth that many players may be attracted to and decide to invest in her when she joins in Chapter 8. And if you're not a fan of training either of those units, both Hugh and Ray show up promotion ready and can be decent filler if fed a Guiding Ring. My point in listing all of these units is that there are a lot of candidates for promotion on the magical end of things, and not that many Guiding Rings. Making up for this deficit using the Chapter 16 secret shop is pretty tempting, were it not for the fact that Chapter 21 also has a secret shop, and that one contains buyable stat boosters, including boots. Because of this singular secret shop, for many playthroughs, the economy of Binding Blade on repeat playthroughs revolves around saving as much money as you can for the Chapter 21 secret shop. The funny thing is, at least in my opinion, outside of LTC, those boots are not actually super helpful or necessary, but they are incredibly fun, and so I always cap movement on my favorite units, or at least get them to 14, because that's the most efficient use of boots since they each gain +2 move, but 15 is the cap, which is an uneven number, and it's just fun. It's fun. I love optimizing boots on whoever my favoritism projects have been in this particular playthrough. I'm smiling just thinking about it. I don't know what is so addicting about zooming all the way across the map for the last 3 maps. I definitely would make better use of that gold buying killer weapons earlier on in order to boost my combat, as opposed to just zooming through the last 2 maps, but there's something about a 15 move unit that just puts a smile on my face. And honestly, this sort of mischievous joy is sort of fitting for a product you can only get from Anna's secret shop. I know that modern interpretations of Anna kind of cast her as this evil hyper-capitalist who's only obsessed with money and who calls out Nagi for being a filthy commie, but back in the day, Anna was a more goofy, jovial figure. Marth even talks to her about how she would get more customers if her shop wasn't secret, and she sort of dismisses it because she's just goofing around. We'll touch on this topic again when I cover the more recent iterations of Anna later in the video, but for now, let's move on to my beloved Fire Emblem 7, which I actually have something nice to say about. I think Fire Emblem 7 of the 3 GBA games does the best job of incorporating Anna into its story. She doesn't play any sort of major role, but she is actually in one of the buildings you can visit in Chapter 16X or 17X, depending on whether it's Hector or Eliwood mode, because numbering in FE7 is weird. That map is the Port of Verdane, which is the guide-in where you have to talk to Fargus to convince him to let you onto his boat. There's an inn near your starting position that Anna is in, and if you visit her in the inn, then in the following chapter Pirate Ship's cutscene, Jake will replace Dart in the dialogue telling you to go to the shop because it's your last chance to shop for a little bit. I think this is kind of a cool Easter egg, and it reinforces that once again this is the same Anna we know from the Arcanea and Judd Girl games, because she has that relationship with Jake that is at least implied to be romantic in this instance. It's not as explicit as it has been in previous games, but it doesn't need to be. We know these characters. I mean, I guess we didn't know these characters when we first played Fire Emblem 7, because this was the first game to come to the West, but I assume that this was written with Japanese audiences in mind, since coming to the West was sort of a late decision in Epi7's development. Anyway, the secret shops in Fire Emblem 7 aren't really anything special to write home about. The biggest thing is that you can get early physics staves in them, as well as I believe this is the only game in the franchise where there are 2 different secret shops on the same map. In Dragon's Gate, there's one in the top left and one in the bottom right, and they actually have different inventories than each other. It's kind of weird, but whatever. Not really anything else notable. It's not that they're bad secret shops, they're just not, like, super standout. I guess you can buy the Silver Blade, the worst weapon in the game, if you want. As we move on to the Sacred Stones, Anna is once again confined to Shopkeeper, but the secret shops in this game are kind of interesting to me. First off, the international releases of the Sacred Stones actually had wildly different inventories in the secret shops than the Japanese release did. The Japanese versions featured some stat boosters and some siege tomes, whereas the Western releases were much more toned back. Much like in Fire Emblem 7, the most notable thing available in these secret shops are physics staves. Now, Fire Emblem 8 does allow you to revisit shops on the world map, but secret shops are exempt from this at least until you get to the post-game. Once you are in Creature Campaign, you can revisit secret shops even if you hadn't discovered them initially, but they will have completely different inventories, and this expanded inventory now contains things like those siege tomes I mentioned. So I think that's pretty cool. It's not really that useful. I mean, I guess it is useful if you're trying to do the lagged out ruins, but personally, I don't find the Creature Campaign super interesting, but it's kind of neat that they at least allowed for you to go secret shopping in this niche game mode. I don't really have much else to say about the Sacred Stone secret shops, which is a shame because this is the last original game to have secret shops. I already talked about Fire Emblem 11 and 12 having secret shops in them, but in my mind, that's not really a new secret shop because they are just remakes of games that already had secret shops, and they make a couple of adjustments, but not any significant ones to feel like it's something wholly new. It makes sense, though, that they would move away from the secret shop system, because Fire Emblem as a whole moved away from having you shop on the map. Instead, you do all of your capitalism inside of menus or in the hub worlds that have increasingly become a burden on the Fire Emblem gameplay. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about the Tellius games, because Anna actually does make an appearance there, although it is a minor one. She exists solely in the game's tutorials, which you can access through the options menu. These are a series of cute little cutscenes meant to familiarize players unfamiliar with Fire Emblem with the basic mechanics, and include such classics as the blue soldier asking the red soldier to join him, and the red soldier just decides to because, hey, why not? If you haven't watched these together, I would encourage you to check them out either by booting up Path of Radiance, or if you don't have $1 million, searching a video for them on YouTube. They're kinda cute and they don't take too much time. But that's all Anna does in the Tellius duology, since the role of shopkeepers have been replaced by the traveling merchant convoy. There aren't any secret shops in the land of Tellius, although Amy's bargains do play a similar role since she has rare goods, but instead of them being gate-kept behind arbitrary secret spaces and member cards, instead they are in limited quantity. Also, speaking of Amy, did you know that she is also a reoccurring character in Fire Emblem? Yeah, as it turns out, she is also an Arcanean shopkeeper. Or at the very least, she appears to be. These shops in Arcanea are also run by a black-haired, red-hooded woman, and while the English localization of Fire Emblem 11 refers to this woman as La Rebelle, which would imply that she's a different character with a similar design. The Japanese version of La Rebelle has the same name as the Japanese version of Amy. Thus, I assume that either Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn or Shadow Dragon has a localization error. My guess would be Shadow Dragon because it makes more sense for one game to get messed up than two, but also the Tellius games notoriously had some issues around their localization, so it could be in that ballpark as well. I'm not really sure which one is correct. Regardless, all of this has nothing to do with Anna, but there's also not much to talk about with Anna in the Tellius games. And before we move on to the modern era, quote-unquote, which starts with Awakening, a game that is over a decade old, I do want to reflect on how Anna is portrayed in Fire Emblems 1 through 12. Because I think Awakening marks a very significant turning point for what Anna is, both from a gameplay and character perspective. In the first game, Anna appeared to have some sort of supernatural power to break the fourth wall. She is in the menu, but also in the game world, and she runs a shop that only the most seasoned of explorers can find. As Fire Emblem moved from continent to continent, Anna seemingly always moved with it, despite the fact that the settings were often on different realities entirely. Anna was a constant. And we know that this is the same Anna, not only because her behavior and appearance is similar, but because she has the same boyfriend as well. She is consistently portrayed as goofy, which is fitting for an Easter egg. And for the most part, her presence doesn't attract more attention than it necessarily warrants. Players of Fire Emblem 7 visiting the inn will either recognize Anna or they won't. If they recognize her, she's a cool Easter egg, but if they don't, she doesn't seem anything out of the ordinary. Just another citizen in the land of Leap. And honestly, I really like this version of Anna. She exists as something fun but minor for loyal fans without taking anything away from those who might not recognize her or those who want to be absorbed in the lore of the specific world that we're visiting. Now, when the 3DS came out, I actually took quite a long time off of Fire Emblem and gaming in general. And even when I got back into the series, I didn't own a 3DS, so I just played the older games again. But eventually I got sick of trying different pairings out in Fire Emblem 4 or scrolling up different units in Thracia, and decided that I would see what the new world of Nintendo handhelds had to offer. And because I wanted to play them in order, the game I started with was Awakening. I actually didn't know that Anna was playable going in, and when I found out about this, I was actually kind of hyped. Considering that Awakening was potentially the final game in the series, it made sense for them to make Anna a playable character during this send-off. Sort of the logical end for a recurring Easter egg character. Well, for better or worse, Awakening did not mark the end of the series, but its huge success did lead to Anna becoming playable in basically every game going forward. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of annoyed by this. Playable Anna once is a cool novelty, but playable Anna in every single game gets annoying really quickly. Especially because Awakening also made a major overhaul to Anna's characterization, as well as the lore around her. While it's true that in previous games Anna typically ran shops, the desire to make money was never really a core part of her characterization. In fact, she had a conversation with Marth where she seemed to reject the idea of profits being important to her. She hid her shops because she thought it was funny to do so, and I always got the distinct feeling that she sold these incredibly powerful items at a loss, because she's just sort of a goofy chaos gremlin like that. I mean, in Fire Emblem 1 and 11, she influences the outcome of the war by telling you to recruit her boyfriend, who's one of the more powerful Shadow Dragon units. In Fire Emblem 4, she gives away a special sword because she likes the way that a dancer performs. But the Awakening writers saw that she was a shopkeeper and decided that that made her into Scrooge McDuck. I'll put my cards on the table. I'm really not a fan of the way that Awakening writes most of its characters, and I think that Anna falls victim to this harder than most due to the limited number of supports that she has available. Anna has 3 possible supports, one with Robin, one with Tiki, and one with Morgan if she's Morgan's mother. We can largely discount the Morgan one. Morgan's supports with their non-Robin parents are mostly the same. It's about Morgan trying to figure out why they have memories of Robin but not Robin's spouse. And they play out in mostly the same way, but whoever the non-Robin parent is makes a couple of quippy lines. In this case, Anna talks about liking bonds and stocks when Morgan says that he wants to bond with her, because haha, it's a merchant, isn't that funny? Anna's support with Robin will depend on Robin's gender. If Robin is a girl, then Anna will attempt to scam Robin by selling her a skin cream that is just a ripoff. In fact, it's worse than a ripoff. It's untested and Robin is functionally acting as guinea pig for this new product. It's never outright stated, but it's heavily implied that Robin catches onto this, and so she decides to get revenge on Anna, pretending that the skin cream worked wonders. Jealous of Robin's smooth skin, Anna asks for some of the cream and Robin gives it to her, which causes Anna to bloat up and attract mosquitoes and all sorts of other bizarre side effects. It's honestly a fine support. It kind of fits Anna's goofy trickster personality from previously, and kind of fits her Mr. Scrooge personality from Awakening onwards, although I would say it definitely leans much more into the latter category than the former. Even though Anna is kind of a chaos gremlin in the old games, she's never actively hostile towards people. And here, giving Robin untested cream, even kind of by accident, and then repeatedly lying about it, just feels pretty malicious. But it's in her supports with male Robin and Tiki that I really take issue. The Tiki support is really Anna at her worst. She tricks Tiki into giving her an autograph that she can sell, as well as parading her about to give speeches in Talkin' with Tiki that she will charge attendance for. Since Tiki is a religious figure, Anna knows that she can charge the citizens to see her or listen to her or whatnot, and she will make tons of money doing so. And she does this without consulting Tiki, who of course would never go along with it. Tiki does eventually learn of the deception and confronts Anna, threatening her with the Dragonstone unless she gives all of the money that she earned to Tiki so that Tiki can return it to its rightful owners. And this, of course, leads to the iconic line, "You're a job-killing socialist." God, I do not like the writing in Awakening characters or this new version of Anna. Like, Anna was not always just a hyper-capitalist obsessed with profits over nothing else. It's really quite silly. This support follows the same pattern as the female Robin one. Anna tricks someone, that person finds out, and gets revenge on Anna. It's a recurring pattern because Anna is just a bad person who only cares about money. I hate this. With male Robin, Anna spends most of her time talking about how money is the most important thing in the world and basically nothing else matters. Robin tries to convince her otherwise, and Anna counters every single argument by saying that money makes it better. Even when talking about love, Anna says that money matters in love because you have to spend money to go on expensive dates or get fancy dinners and whatnot. She also laughs about how she scammed someone by selling them something for 3 times what it's worth, and just overall is kind of a piece of garbage. The A support kind of abruptly has Anna talk about how she cares about companionship, and if you choose to marry her, then she will confess to Robin that she does actually care about him more than money. And we even get a hint of the old whimsical Anna with her saying that she's going to marry him immediately, but he better act fast before her whimsy takes her in another direction. This feels very much like the carefree traveler jumping dimensions with her boyfriend Jake. But of course, because Awakening needs to let you fuck everyone, she can't have her boyfriend Jake. Although, in fairness, Jake is not dating this Anna, because this is not the same Anna that we are used to, not just because her personality has been completely rewritten, but because Awakening introduced some new Anna lore. There are now just bajillions of Annas out there in the multiverse, and it's not necessarily limited to one Anna per plane. We see multiple Annas in Arcanea, both on the map screen and 2 separate Annas in different paralogs. Paralog 2 has an Anna that is not the same Anna as the Paralog 4 one, and they even have dialogue with each other indicating that they're sisters. This theoretically left open the possibility that the hyper-capitalist Scrooge McDuck Anna of Awakening would not be the same characterization that all future Annas got. But of course, that's not what Intelligent Systems ended up doing with the character. Instead, she became the face of greed in the franchise, and ironically, also the face of greed for Intelligent Systems, because she's in charge of the DLC stores in the incredibly predatory DLC model that Awakening Fates and SOV offered. I'll be real, much like with the shift from Trickster Anna to Hyper-Capitalist Anna, I don't like the idea of there being a bunch of different Annas out there in the multiverse. I mean, this is the first time that Fire Emblem has explicitly acknowledged that there is a multiverse. I kind of just assumed that all of the different settings were taking place divorced from each other, but no, there's apparently the ability to jump between dimensions, and it's not just limited to Anna. We'll see some characters do it going from Awakening to Fates, and we see Priam, who is supposed to be from Tellius, which is a land far removed from Arcanea. The various Annas are definitely the most frequent dimensional jumpers, but they are by no means the only ones. Okay, enough negativity, because Anna isn't just a character in Awakening, she's a playable unit, and so I guess I should discuss how she is as a unit. I actually really like this version of Anna. She's a Trickster, which is a new class in Awakening that is a hybrid swords plus stabs class. She has a focus on magic, so she can use the Levin sword that you get from Gangrel to great effect, and she takes good advantage of reclassing going into either Mage or Sage in order to boost her magic stat and be an even better rescue bot than she already is. I actually think she's one of the better units in the game, purely because she's a pre-promote, something that Awakening lacks many of. Combine this with her inherent +1 move, the movement that she gives to people on pair-up, and the fact that she can use rescue staffs from a very good distance, and Anna is crucial for any map that you want to rescue skip. And you can rescue skip quite a few maps because rescue is infinitely viable in Awakening. But even if you were playing the maps quote-unquote honestly, Anna is quite useful. She has very good combat stats, with her high speed and magic, meaning that she will frequently not get doubled by things, as well as potentially stack a good amount of avoid, especially on the lower difficulties. And because she gets hard mode bonuses and lunatic mode bonuses, she scales into the higher difficulties and still performs incredibly well. I think she's a valuable member of any team that'll have her. The only downside is that she doesn't build support ranks with too many characters, and since supports are pretty important for Awakening's pair-up system, that can be a drawback if you have Robin paired with someone else. But in my opinion, that's pretty good design, because she has the notable drawback of missing out on the support system in exchange for the upside of incredibly good stats and a nice toolkit that no one else really has. Like, other units can go Trickster, but typically they're not going to have particularly good magic stats. Overall, Anna's gameplay is incredibly nice, but all of these story and lore changes really bother me, and unfortunately, as we move into the Land of Fate's Landia, Intelligent Systems is going to double down on all of the aspects of Anna that I personally dislike. At the start of Fire Emblem Fates, Anna's only role in the game was to exist within the menus. She ran the store in the Elfrealm Gate in order to sell you DLC for real-world money. I'm not a huge fan of this because it continues the trend of just haha Anna capitalist, but at the very least they didn't have her playable and kept that as a special property of her in Awakening. However, as most of you probably know, this was not to last, and a few months after Fate's launch, the Anna on the Run DLC was released. This chapter added Anna as a recruitable outlaw, which, I mean, makes sense as a class for her because it promotes into Trickster in Fates, and Trickster is her Awakening class and also fits with her personality. But it started the trend of Anna being playable in every single game going forward, instead of it just being a special end of series note as it was, in my opinion, meant to be in Awakening. The map itself is also kind of dumb, in my opinion. You have to protect her from 12 different brigand bosses who are clones of Leloid and Leluin who already exist in the main story. It's really weird. I think it's supposed to be a joke about how there's a bunch of different Annas, but much like Capitalism Anna, the idea of there being a bunch of different Annas is not something that was core to Anna prior to Awakening. This just feels like a continuation of Awakening's depiction of Anna, which I personally like a lot less than the previous game's depiction of her. We do also get explicit confirmation that this is not the same Anna who we played as in Awakening, because she has a different birthday, one day prior to the Awakening Anna's birthday, actually. And I mentioned this in my birthdays video a couple of weeks ago, but Anna is not the only character in this game to be given that treatment. In the Birthright route, there are 3 characters who are kind of spiritual reincarnations of characters who were popular in Awakening. I think there was some poll about which characters would get ported over. I don't remember, I wasn't really in the community at the time. But regardless, Asuji is just Gaius, Rajat is just Thracia, and Kaldori is just Cordelia. Except they're also explicitly not those characters. Like, they have the exact same faces and personalities, and their names are anagrams, and they're clearly meant to be the Awakening characters, but these are also different people with different memories. Like, Asuji was given birth to by Saizo. He didn't come into Fateslandia from Ylisse, he was always in Fateslandia. In fact, while playing the Revelations route, this becomes incredibly clear if you pair Severa with Tsubaki. Even though she is fighting under the name Selena, this is Severa from Fire Emblem Awakening. She's just taken on a pseudonym because she jumped dimensions to help Anakos fight a proxy war against himself. It's weird. I get it, Fates has a very strange plot, we don't need to relitigate that. The important thing for our purposes is that if she impregnates Tsubaki, he will give birth to Kaldori, who looks exactly like Cordelia, but isn't her, and Severa talks about how all of Cordelia's traits must have skipped generations. Anyway, the reason that these units are relevant in the Anna video is, much like Anna, their birthday is one day prior to the Awakening version of them's birthday. While the explanation for Anna existing during a bunch of different times and on a bunch of different continents and even in different realities is that there are just thousands of Annas and they're all sisters with each other, no such explanation is given for the existence of multiple Asujis, Cordelias, or Tharjas, but instead they're just coincidentally identical in terms of both their looks and personality. But, like, how do we know that these are the only instances of these 3 Awakening characters? And for that matter, how do we know that this isn't something that has happened to a large number or possibly all of the characters in Fire Emblem? I mean, if we look back far enough, we can see examples of this like Shanam and Shannon in the Judge Girl games. While Shanam is clearly supposed to be an impersonator of Shannon, he also accidentally teaches the Astra skill to Merida. And he looks so close to the actual Shannon that he fools just about everyone he runs into, other than Homer. And like, the emblem versions of all of the lords in the Fire Emblem games are in many ways similar to these Fateslandia clones of the Awakening characters. They share names, appearance, and personalities, but some of their memories are not linked to each other, because the emblems experience different realities than the original lords they're based on. I mean, heck, in the 3DS DLCs, we played through alternate timelines, where Generation 2 of both Awakening and Fates had to save the day after Generation 1 died. Since, for whatever reason, Fire Emblem has introduced the multiverse and referenced it in the main plots of multiple of its games, these alternate timelines could easily just be alternate universes where events played out slightly differently. I mean, that's kind of the premise of a lot of alt-universe fiction. Rather than being completely different lands, they're just our lands with some of the variables different. I mean, depending on how canon you want to consider the Einhars, then Awakening also has duplicates of characters from all of the previous Fire Emblem games that just sort of wander around the map and sometimes sell you broken items. What I'm getting at is that it is entirely possible that every single Fire Emblem character is in an Anna-esque situation. Maybe it's not as extreme as Anna, where there's bajillions of them, but Esuji, Cordelia, and Rajat have shown us that this could happen to anyone. You don't have to be a redheaded hypercapitalist to have a doppelganger that exists in another dimension or another time. Honestly though, if I'm putting my cards on the table, I think this entire idea is very, very stupid, and I hope Fire Emblem never goes back to this well, because it's kind of dumb. I think it's dumb. I don't like it. I guess I should talk about Anna from a gameplay perspective, but I've never actually used her. I haven't even played the Anna on the Run DLC. From looking at her, she's kind of just like fine. She's not the god tier unit that she was in Awakening, but she's not the stinker that she would be in later titles either. The biggest thing that holds Anna back is once again the lack of supports. It's not as extreme as in Awakening because not all aspects of pair up are tied to the support system, but a couple of them are. The bonuses that you get for being in guard stance are influenced by your support rank with the partner, and the bonuses that you get from attack stance are influenced as well, although you do still get the flat plus 10 hit rate, even if you don't have a support with them, and you do get like the class-based stat bumps if you're in guard stance. So it's not as huge a deal as like in Awakening, where the ability to do a dual guard and a dual strike both heavily depend on your support rank, but it does hold Anna back, and it is worth noting that a lot of Fate's playthroughs will specifically route supports to access as many child paralogs as they can, either because they want to access the children as units, or because they want to access items in the paralogs. For example, Ophelia's paralog gives you a lot of really valuable scrolls, and if you can get them early on, it's a boon to your army. So the fact that Anna isn't able to give you access to more paralogs is definitely something that will hurt your team overall. She can, I guess, technically give you access to the Kana paralog, but Kana is probably the worst child unit, and you don't really get anything special from going to the paralog. Even the capturable bosses are not particularly good. They don't have any good skills. They're just balls of stats, which is not as impressive as some of the other capturable bosses. So it does hurt a little bit that Anna can't contribute towards those paralogs, and potentially is something that you could hold against her. I don't really know the standard criteria, in quotes, for ranking Fate's units versus paralogs, but I thought it was at least worthwhile to bring up, because when picking out units to use on your team, it's not just how good the units are, but what pairings you want to do that can influence the long-term team structure of a Fates run, especially a highly planned one on the higher difficulties or one of the more difficult routes and stuff. Her personal skill, Make a Killing, allows her to get money for getting kills, and this can potentially help you out in Conquest, where the economy is slightly more limited, although I also think that outside of the early game, you can usually find enough gold for everything that your characters need on your Conquest team. And Birthright and Revelations, if you want to, you can grind for money, but even if you don't want to grind for money, Birthright's economy is very generous, and Revelations gives you a lot of things that you can sell. I think that a lot of people don't think about selling items in Fates because they are infinite use, but this is a great way to bolster the economy and makes it so that Anna's economy-breaking personal skill kind of isn't super necessary. And to be clear, I don't mean just in Revelations, like sell stuff that you're not using in Conquest. The money is useful. But speaking of money, this is a video about Anna, so let's talk about the next iteration of her appearance in Fire Emblem Three Houses. In the beginning of Fire Emblem Three Houses, Anna's presence was limited to that of a non-player character. She sold you items in the prep shop and existed in the monastery, sending you on some missions and even opening up a shop of her own if you completed a specific mission for her. This shop sold some rare and potentially valuable items, but it was only accessible during monastery exploration, so you couldn't go to it during battle preparations when you realized what you needed or during any of the other freely accessible menus. This is the closest modern games have gotten to the act of shopping on the map like we used to back in the day, but it's still not really the same thing because you're not under any sort of time pressure, you just always have to do it during monastery exploration. Of course, much like Fates, Anna was playable if you purchased the DLC. At the time, most people thought this was just going to be the pattern going forward. After all, Anna is supposed to be the money character, so spend real-world money if you want to use her. But also, most people probably didn't want to use her. It was kind of laughable, Anna is widely considered to be one of the worst characters in the cast. Personally, I don't think she's the very worst, but she's definitely in bottom 5. Her bases and growths are pretty bad, although to be fair, in Three Houses, stats are probably at the least important they have been in the entire franchise. But even outside of her abysmal stats, Anna doesn't really offer you anything unique. She doesn't get any centralizing combat arts or authority skills like other units do, and her personal skill is pretty bad, simply boosting her luck by 8 points. But probably the worst attribute Anna has is her lack of access to supports. If you're playing on Maddening mode, supports are very important for upping accuracy through linked attacks, and the only character in the game that Anna supports is Byleth. As a result, by adding Anna to your team, you are actively lowering the quality of everyone around you due to the fact she doesn't add anything via linked attack. That's not to say that Anna doesn't have any good qualities. The fact she starts at level 5 means she can access one of the beginner classes, and if you choose to have her focus on Faith, then even without tutoring, she learns Heal within the first month of you recruiting her. This allows her to reclass to Monk and have full use of heal casts, which is actually something that can be a little bit difficult for your other magical students to access by Chapter 3, as Noble and Commoner only have half uses for spells, and once your magical students run out of spells, it's hard for them to secure kills or otherwise gain experience. Her healing charges combined with Wrath Strike and Curve Shot for free means that Anna can fill a number of roles at the same time in the early game, although she doesn't do any of them particularly well and is definitely not a great long-term student. I guess you could theoretically train her towards using magical sword combat arts. Those are often stronger than they appear on paper, but generally I'm not super impressed by Anna's performance. At least she's not sold separately from other DLC characters. That would be adding insult to injury if the only thing you purchased was Anna, and Anna is just like trash garbage as a unit. I'll also say that her characterization is not really expanded upon from buying the DLC. Like, obviously, I'm not a fan of the way that modern Anna is characterized in general, but she's kind of just not really present at all. She has a couple of voice lines in the monastery and a support chain with Byleth and only Byleth, but like, nothing else? Like, in a game that is renowned for its characters being deep and complex, having Anna just sort of like sit there and talk to Byleth and then that's it, that's all she does, is pretty disappointing. And I think the writers realized this because they took her in a different direction for Fire Emblem Engage. Granted, part of that was the change in voice actors, but I also think that they recognized it was time to shake the Anna formula up. So they decided to turn her into a child soldier. From a gameplay perspective, she fills in the general trainee / zero to hero role. She has a really high magic growth, but starts out in the Axe Fighter class, so you can either choose to promote her to warrior and make use of the Hurricane Axe and the Shining Bow, or you can choose to reclass her into either Mage Knight or Sage and have her magic stat get even higher. Those obviously aren't the only options, especially on lower difficulties. In my second playthrough of the game, it was on hard mode, and I turned her into a Bow Knight so that she could use the Levin Sword and the Shining Bow, and it has a little bit of a higher magic cap than Warrior, and that was pretty fun. In general, I don't think she's a particularly strong unit in this game, but she's not supposed to be. Like, these zero to hero units are never about being quote-unquote good or efficient. They're about the fun of numbers going up. And like, it is absolutely fun to see that magic number keep going up and up and up. And your money will also go up because Anna has the personal skill Make a Killing. It's the same one that she had in Fates. Three Houses, she had a Luck Plus skill, which I didn't even mention during the Three Houses portion, but yeah, she just gets +8 luck as her personal skill. It's really pathetic. But in Fates and Engage, she gets the really fun Make a Killing skill. She can get money from killing enemies. It's a luck percent chance, and Anna does not have a very good base luck stat in Engage, but if you level her up, she will eventually start gaining luck, and you can feed her goddess icons if you want, although if you're doing that, like, is she making more money than if you sold the goddess icons? You know, I don't know. I don't think it's super important. Much like with Fates, the economy is not as tight as a lot of people seem to think it is. I know that obviously you can break the economy wide open with the Ancient Well, but even if you don't do that, I find that the economy in Fire Emblem Engage it's not like unrestricted. You do need to think about your money, but you're also not in such dire straits that the extra 500 gold Anna gets from her personal skill is going to be like life-saving or anything. It's also worth acknowledging that in many cases, Anna is probably going to need to spend some money in order to make money. If you're doing either of the builds that reclasses her into something other than the fighter line, you're spending money on a second seal. If you're promoting her, you spend money on a master seal. You probably spend money on forges in order to secure those kills, and while these are resources that most other units want to spend as well, so I don't think we should subtract from Anna's viability of like, oh my god, she needs a forge and a master seal. It is also worth factoring in that you don't go positive on money as quickly as you might think you do. You know, Anna is going to need a little bit more early investment, and there is the late game payoff, of course, but if we're worried about money in the early game, Anna is not the solution to those worries. At least without some excessive rigging. But it's not just the gameplay with Anna that's changed. Her characterization has also seen a significant retooling. She still has the cartoonish obsession with money, but it feels less like an evil Scrooge McDuck and more like a small child running a lemonade stand. Partially because she is a small child. Like, the voice performance is definitely part of why Anna comes off as more charming than nefarious. But I also think the way that they have Anna run her business is significantly different from how it was in the previous entries. Like, in Awakening, Anna is absolute scumbag levels of evil. She tries to scam everyone she interacts with, and she gets her comeuppance in the same way you would expect a villain to. Here, Anna is absolutely trying to make money, but she's doing it in a way that is, well, more honest. She brainstorms with Tamara to find a product that people will like and find useful. She and From find a way to market their beet pies in a way that'll sell them more, and even her Alir support, where she sells things that have been made by the Divine Dragon, feels much more innocent than the evil scheming scam artist we see in Awakening's Tiki support. But I think the most important touch is that Anna is humanized because she doesn't just care about money. In fact, I would argue that money isn't even her primary motivation. It's finding her family. In Engage, Anna has been separated from the rest of her sisters, and this is something that makes her incredibly sad. In fact, looking through her supports, I get the distinct feeling that she's not running a business because she wants to make a more $1 billion, but because it will keep her mind off of how much she misses her family, as well as remind her of them. Running a shop is kind of all she has left of them. In fact, Anna even gets supports that are unrelated to running a business, but focus instead on her homesickness, such as her Brunei support, where he makes her a stew to help cheer her up because it reminds her of what she used to eat with her family. We even get to see that she directly values her family over her business, as in her Tamara support, she initially does not want to attach her name to the product because she thinks it's kind of tacky and it might turn customers away. But when Tamara says that her family might notice if a product has the name Anna on it, she changes her mind because it's important for her to find her family. So important, in fact, that this is what her ending is about. Her ending slide isn't her sitting on a giant Scrooge McDuck-sized mountain of gold coins, but instead reuniting with all of her older sisters. And like, I'm not going to pretend that Engage Anna is the deepest character that we have, but she's definitely the deepest version of Anna that we have, and I certainly like her better than the Fire Emblem equivalent of Mr. Krabs. With that in mind, I'm pretty optimistic about the future of Anna. I'd still rather she weren't a playable character, but I don't think that's changing anytime soon, and at least giving her a full slew of supports with the rest of the cast and not just the My unit, as well as giving her a deeper characterization than just being obsessed with money, is a step in the right direction in my opinion. That does it for Anna in the main series, but Anna also is pretty omnipresent in the various Fire Emblem spin-offs that we've gotten over the years. The most significant one is I'm led to believe she actually has a large role in the story of Fire Emblem Heroes, but I refuse to play any gacha garbage games, so we're not going to talk about that here. Instead, let's talk about Fire Emblem Warriors, which features Anna as a key NPC and then later a playable character. On each map of the story mode, there is an Anna's memento that you can collect by killing enough enemies and then finding Anna on the map before she despawns. A similar thing happens in the Hyrule Warriors game with golden Skulltulas, and I'm led to believe that this is something that is taken from the other Warriors games, but I might be completely off base there. The only ones I've played are Hyrule and Fire Emblem. Regardless, if you collect enough of these mementos, you will build an illustration, and that illustration unlocks an incredibly difficult battle. By beating that incredibly difficult battle, you unlock Anna as a playable character. But I never did that because I'm actually pretty bad at Fire Emblem Warriors, so yeah, I don't really have any footage of me doing that, sorry. Apparently her moveset references Jake, so that's pretty cool, especially because Intelligent Systems seems to have mostly forgotten about him. In Fire Emblem Warriors sequel, Three Hopes, Anna is not playable, but she does still run a shop in the base camp, and you can buy some pretty valuable stuff from there. I never unlocked her shop because I kind of got bored playing Three Hopes, but from my understanding, she sells like seals and forging materials and stuff that you probably want to access. And Anna is also relegated to shopkeeper in the Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE spin-off. Her presence here is kind of interesting because all of the other Fire Emblem characters in TMS are mirages, which means they can only exist within the idol sphere world, rather than in the real world. But Anna is running a shop in the real world, which would imply that she's a real person. And that's kinda weird. Moreover, as you get farther into the game, a second Anna will appear in the same shop, and this Anna is supposedly not visible to normal people, only idol masters can see her. There's not really any explanation for this, and TMSFE has a kinda nonsensical plot that, I'll be honest, after about the halfway point, I stopped paying attention, because it's bad. It's a bad story. I don't care. But yeah, this weirdness, I guess it could theoretically have some Anna lore implications, but I don't really know what they would be. To me, it just feels like an Easter egg that they didn't really think about, like, lore-wise, so I'm also not going to think about lore-wise. And it being an Easter egg is also backed up by the fact that Amy is another shopkeeper in TMSFE, so maybe they just, like, decided to take the recurring shopkeepers and throw them in Tokyo Mirage Sessions, and call it a day. Lastly, in the discontinued card game Fire Emblem Cypher, Anna has many appearances, and there are a couple of special skills associated with Anna in reference to the fact that there are hundreds of different Annas. Cypher has a lot of rules, but the two that are important for our purposes is you can only have one of each character on the field, so if you already have an Edelgard on the field, you can't play another Edelgard. And each character can only be supported by characters who are not them. So Chrom cannot support Chrom, but Lucina can support Chrom, etc., etc. These mechanics are usually lore accurate, because, you know, you can't pair Chrom up with Chrom. But in the case of Anna, there's supposed to be dozens of different Annas throughout the various multiverses. So, of course, she's given abilities to represent this in-game. Initially, she had the ability Hundreds of Annas, which meant that you could play multiple Annas at the same time, and Anna could support other Annas. However, in later entries, this was changed to the ability Annas from Hundreds of Worlds, which maintained the ability to play multiple Annas, but stopped Anna from self-supporting. I'm not sure why this change was made. I'm not super familiar with the Cypher meta, but from my understanding, Anna was never a super-powered threat. If you're a hardcore Cypher player, correct me in the comments. One thing I do want to highlight from the Cypher mechanics is that Rajat, Kaldori, and Asuji are considered to be separate characters from their Awakening counterparts, which you would expect because, again, within game lore, they are different people. But one thing that's kind of weird is that Laszlo, Severa, and Odin are considered to be different from their Awakening versions. They are able to support them. They still can't self-support, so Odin can't support Odin, but Odin can support Owain. Inigo can support Laszlo, and you can have a Laszlo and an Inigo on the field at the same time. However, I don't think this is meant to imply anything lore-wise. I think this is just a result of the way the mechanics work, going off of the names, and it's not too dissimilar from, for example, having Thalia Heretic Cathar on the field at the same time as Thalia Guardian of Thrabian, at the same time as Thalia and the Gitrog monster, as the same time as the Gitrog monster, if you were to play a game of Magic the Gathering. There is still, lore-wise, only one Thalia, but there are 4 different cards of her, and you can play them all at the same time, despite the legend rule. That probably just went over almost all of my viewers' heads, because not everyone who watches my videos plays Magic the Gathering, but basically my point is that mechanics do not necessarily mean lore, especially when it comes to a card game, where the mechanics are first and foremost going to be prioritized. Just like how I first and foremost prioritize my patrons when saying thank you. So thank you to Michael Kraus, Len, Gameboo, Carosa, Fyrant, Smaz Ruby, Saxon, Seraphew58, Reflect, Maren McLean, Calamity Callie, Queen Eliza, Adele, Jamie Collins, Mean Jojo, Thick Molder, Danielle Kalaskis, Jagan is an Est, Arvis, Bell Wenska, Diesyke, Tailored Muffin, George Granville the 7th PM, SUP, Caius Cole, Gabe the Green, Control Aegis, Joanna the Wrenchwitch, Juniperjungby, Ginger, and especially my Jagans, Autumn Kelsey, Julia Kyoto, and Cynthia. I may not like money-grubbing Anna, but I am still thankful for the money that y'all provide. You truly do make these videos possible, and that's awesome, because this is basically a dream job. If you're interested in supporting the channel, there is a link to my Patreon below. It'll put your name up here with these lovely folks. I will thank you every week, and there's plenty of other benefits like early videos, polls to influence the channel, and some stuff that's a little bit too spicy to talk about on YouTube. But please, please, only donate if you can comfortably afford to do so. I don't want anyone going broke over Fire Emblem videos, and you are in no way obliged to support me. If you are looking for free ways to support the channel, I would really appreciate you clicking those like and subscribe buttons that tells YouTube to show this to more people. But regardless of what you choose to do, I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay safe, gamers.